to all you people online, we're just rounding up the people from the tea room. We will be starting in just a moment, but they were resistant to listening to my boing. I did it a few times. They think it's lunchtime. It's not lunchtime. But you get a relay. Yeah. Okay. Well, you may excuse yourself. We have the committee, and I think the staff are trickling back in, so we can start. And we've got a 5.1 quarterly economic development program update with Mitch King. Welcome, Mitch. Thank you. Thank you for the report. Anything to report that's different from what was in the report, or?
Just that I'm interested in the feedback of the committee on how they would like to receive this information in the future as well. So I've taken the approach that at these committee meetings we can provide some data and information on how things are going out there in the community, but also an update on the work program and whether there are any priority areas within that work program that the committee wants to focus on in the future.
I think I did sort of flippantly suggest in the break that it's a very sobering read, and that you had, it'd be nice to have some more cheerful things. And then you said that you did have some cheerful news, which.
Yeah, that's right. So we do have some cheery projects that we get to support. They're happening, I guess, relevant to this committee, those in the sustainability space, and that's happening in the seaweed, emerging seaweed industry, where there are 2 existing pilot trials happening in Coromandel Town and one based adjacent to the Thames Wastewater Treatment Plant. And there is a third that is being investigated as well, that will hopefully, where we're supporting them in accessing some funding. And there is a proposal for one of the existing trials to expand again in the future.
That is good news. That's very cheerful. Thank you. Anybody from the floor have questions or comments? Yes, right. No, Rebecca's first. Just turn your mic on.
Thank you for the reminder. Thanks, Mitch. It's probably really a question for the committee, but just looking at the housing affordability index that you have there and some of the graphs that you had to show, I really just wanted to ask the question about, we all had some really productive and really good housing hui locally within our wards. How are we going to, what are our next steps? And we might not answer that in this conversation, but I just wanted to flag that, and let's not let those great connections and sessions fall by the wayside.
I mean, I can answer that, because I did have a chat with the mayor following that, and he suggested that it would be useful for you and I to follow up with the presenter from the Waikato Housing Initiative. So we'll set that up, and you and I can have a meet with him, and then potentially take that on as part of this committee. So the first step will be to get in touch with Axel and just check when he's available, and then he's got a presentation that he does for councils rather than for the public, which is the one we've both seen. So. John.
Thanks, Chair. The worst thing for me, the thing for me in that report was exactly that, the housing affordability and the rentals. And I can't believe we've actually outstripped Queenstown now. I really can't. But by district, in the district, Mitch, are there figures for each town as to how we fare? I don't think we've got it in here, eh?
No, not on the affordability index one. I don't think you can drill down affordability into what they call like small areas. But there are different measures you can look at within the housing sort of data landscape that narrow things up. The affordability one looks at average incomes against average sale prices. Pretty blunt assessment, and we have a lot of people on fixed incomes here, and we of course have all the batch owners. So it is a huge problem, and we're working hard to elevate the perception that that Coromandel has, the worst housing affordability issue in the country, and that's not just related to housing sales either. It's with the rentals as well.
Yeah, I don't know how many people would actually be aware of that. Queenstown gets the publicity all the time, unaffordable housing, unaffordable rents. This is quite interesting, actually.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to know which towns were the hardest hit, but that's not possible.
No, not under the affordability measure.
Yeah, okay.
It's sort of, averages the incomes across the whole.
Thank you.
Lorna?
Sorry if I can just add some comment to that, and I do reference it in the group manager report, but a housing affordability conference I went to, and the Waikato Housing Initiative actually did the presentation and referenced Thames Coromandel. So I was getting a lot of approaches from people around the country who were astounded by those stats. Just want to say though that, and we will have that discussion with the housing initiative and further into this committee as we progress, just around all the different levers and tools that we as a council can contribute to it, but it's not, again, something that we can't do alone. Mitch has referenced the Thames spatial planning and how that will help with housing and zoning. But again, there was a press release that went out yesterday from Kāinga Ora, and we've been working with them, and they're looking at a program of work for their homes in Thames. They've got, I think, 8 that are currently underway, and how many more, Mitch?
There was originally a program of 30, sort of intensifying and gaining 30 dwellings, and so they've started that work. And so in our ED team, we do dip our toes into this work to varying degrees, be it through the spatial planning work or working with Kāinga Ora, supporting Papakainga developments. But from a resourcing perspective, to really move the dial on these big hairy problems, they do require a lot of time and investment, I guess. So,
Martin?
Yes, I had speaking of the houses that they're doing in Thames, I had a query from a ratepayer yesterday, and I dug into the consent tracker and found the work that they're doing up in Mount Pleasant Street Road place. And so there's 2 separate ones where there was 2 houses here and 2 houses here. That's going to 4 houses and 4 houses. So that's basically an additional 4 dwellings up there. And like you say, I think there's a few others happening in the area as well. Just so going back to the seaweed for a moment. So that trial that you were saying, is that a land-based one, like the ones that were happening in Thames? Because part of that fin fish farm, that part of that is also seaweed growing, or cucumbers or whatever.
So the one I was referencing is the land-based trial in Thames, and so the current trial comes to an end. It's been hugely successful, and it's operated by the University of Waikato and AgriSea, and they're looking at ways that they can extend and expand what they've got going on there.
And is that something that as council we're able to obviously facilitate and help?
That's absolutely what we're doing, and which was right at the very start of that conversation with them.
Cool, thank you.
And just to close, Mitch, you sort of asked what information would be useful for us. I think it's, you don't know what you don't know. And so seeing some of this information was quite eye-opening, because I didn't really, particularly in the Infometrics report, like the dairy payout, I hadn't really considered that as part of I don't drive past a dairy farm to get to work every day, and so I sort of hadn't really put that into the broader context of the district, and so that was quite a useful thing to have. I don't think that there's anything in here that was wasted effort for us to see, but having said that, I wouldn't want to put an extra burden on you to produce endless reports for us, and so I think at the moment the balance is quite right, but we can always talk about that, and sort of, I'm sure you guys would have ideas about maybe something that you think we need to see in addition, but I think the balance for this meeting was just right. Thank you. We do have a question from the deputy mayor, and I will allow it, but you have to come to the microphone because otherwise nobody can hear you. Yes.
Apology, I didn't know that. Just a quick comment I'd like to make through Mitch on the housing hui that we had. Alex, was it Alex? I think it was Axel came and spoke, and we had one of our developers who's trying to put a 100-house subdivision together. And following that, he went away and he's gone and redone the scheme to include affordable housing section into that scheme. So it's been a great benefit to come out of that discussion. Thank you.
That's amazing to hear, and I think that facilitation component of the work is something that we can do that doesn't cost a lot of money, and connecting people to different ideas and to each other. So that's great.
Throw one. Rebecca.
Is that something we could look at as a council for all developments?
There are structured ways of approaching that, and Queenstown is really leading the charge on that with inclusionary zoning. And it's a big piece of work, and I think it should be part of the range of options that council considers as the ways that it influences the housing market.
Excellent. It doesn't look like there are any more questions, so I will. I'm happy to move that we receive this quarterly economic development update. Have I got a seconder? We do have a seconder. Yep, Rebecca. And all those in favour? Aye. Great. Thank you, Mitch. Excellent. I believe we have people online for the next item, which is 6.1, council fleet electrification. So, John Muston, is that you?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
So, right,
Oh,
launching.
well, I can understand why you didn't want to come in, have day at the beach.
That's Cook's Beach on a bad day.
Oh, fair enough. All right, John, I think we've all read the report. What can you tell us in addition?
Not so much, really too much in addition, but this certainly is the fleet, is a golden opportunity for the council to take some low-hanging fruit in terms of reducing its carbon footprint. Obviously, our fleet is petrol and diesel orientated at the moment, and so the thrust of going towards an EV first policy will significantly reduce our footprint. It won't happen overnight, as the key thing for that is really we have 19 utility vehicles, they're all diesel based. Unfortunately, there isn't sort of a ready available alternative to that. We're working through with the different groups of council in terms of, just examining the real need for that type of a vehicle. But as you'll appreciate, we've got some pretty rugged territory and people go up some pretty poor condition driveways and roads and things. So there is a place for those things. We just have to get the right mix over time. But that said, even this week, there's been 2 more announcements of other EV ute manufacturers, looking to ramp up production, which we'll see might come to New Zealand by the end of 25. So it's accelerating really, really fast. So it's quite an exciting journey we're on. I suppose the key principle we're talking about is as an EV first policy, though, to make those carbon and emission gains. It's not, the driver isn't so much the financial side of things, but there is savings to be made. Give you a sense of that, our current fuel bill is just under $200,000 a year for all types. So obviously the more we introduce EVs, we're going to cut that cost down. So I'll probably leave it there, Madam Chair, and just open for questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Any questions? Got 2 questions. John first.
John, we'll grab that low-hanging fruit, mate. This is a good report to get for this committee on its first meeting. And I appreciate you brought it to us. Now I've got to try and factor a question into that, otherwise the chairperson will nail me. But no, hey John, well done, great report, and we'll grab it.
You're forgiven. Martin.
Through the chair, I think the question could have been, were you aware, John, that's a great report? So I just wondered, what's the what's the current length of time that the council's internal combustion engine vehicles are kept? I know there was a moratorium, so that might have been extended out, but is it like a sort of 3 to 5 year?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, the small vehicles, cars and small little things like Vitaras, they were all on a 3-year, 150,000 year cycle, and the utes are on a 5-year, 200,000 K cycle. But what we found when we've looked at the fleet, however, is that seldom were vehicles reaching the age, they tend to get to the miles first. So we're still leaving it at 200,000 Ks for the utes, but we're pushing that out to a 7-year period. That's sort of the guide, like we've got some of the couple of the utes that are due for replacement now that have been held on, that are cracking the 220, 230 mark, so we've got a little bit of catch up to do now that we've sort of decided which direction we're going to go in. And we're not going to try and do that overnight because it's just not financially feasible to do it that way, but we will do it as quickly and reasonably as we can.
Yeah, and just a follow-up question. So is there any, and I realise it's still sort of an early infancy stage, but is there any indication from various fleet partners about what the cycle period may be for EVs?
I suppose the jury's out a little bit. What we're finding is increasingly from your Japanese and Korean manufacturers, they're now guaranteeing between 5 and 8 year battery life. And battery life is going to be more of the bigger determinant for that. Before you used to think about wear and tear on your engine, and that gave you sort of your kilometre type thing before you start getting expensive repairs. But the most expensive component for wear and tear on these EVs is the battery. So it comes down to the quality of those, really.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just also like to acknowledge that we have an EV charger on the Thames Administration building, which was donated to us by the Hauraki Resilient Communities Trust, I believe, because it was surplus to their requirements. So that was a generous donation from a community group to council. The one question I had, if we had a policy about this, would it, about electrification, are we having questions with our contractors as well? In public forum this morning, electric rubbish trucks and electric ride-on lawnmowers were mentioned. Is this something that we can progress as a conversation going forward with our contractors? Was it not really a you question? Sorry, John.
No, that's a contract management question rather than council fleet question.
Okay.
But I would comment that it's a good conversation to be had across the board for any way we can reduce our footprint.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Lorna?
Just a couple of comments I wanted to make, as well as that you are aware we've got the EV charging loop where we've got EV chargers on council reserves around the district. We do get approaches from I guess commercial businesses about whether they can set up additional sites. That's something that we're reviewing as part of an EV policy. Aware also that gas stations are introducing the EV chargers into the district, and that there is a competitive market around there as well.
Yeah. No, excellent. Martin looks like he has a question.
Yeah, I mean, can I make just a very quick comment to what?
Quick.
Yeah, and it was discussed in the Sustainability and Resilience Group meetings that we had a couple of years or so ago that that maybe council wouldn't be in the business of purchasing and setting up the chargers, but making it as allowing it as absolutely a permitted thing, and saying, yes, here's some council land that it can go on. How can we make this happen? Or how can we make it possible for Pak'nSave to put something on their on their properties or various supermarkets and that. So just saying, yes, TCDC is open for EV charging. This is how we can make it really simple.
John.
Yeah, I've got something for you in a minute, John, but I was just going to comment on what Martin said, and it ties in with what Lorna said. It is a competitive market out there. We just can't simply make land available, public land available for EV chargers when people are trying to make a crust out of them. So it needs to be looked at really closely. Hey, John, as a result of this report, do you want this committee to do anything specifically? Do you think is there something you'd like from us?
If anything, through the chair, is really just endorsement of the EV first policy, and I think everything else sort of falls beneath that.
Oh, that's easy then. Totally endorsed.
Yes, so the motion doesn't mention an EV first policy, but does talk, that we're receiving the fleet electrification report. So that is a formal policy, that one that you mentioned, the EV first?
Through you, the chair, it hasn't been written as a policy per se.
Well,
but that's the management decision that's been advocated at this stage.
No, in that case, I think the best that we can do, John, is to receive this report. We can receive it, and that is our endorsement. So can I have a mover? We can all move it. Yes, our EV driver is moving that. What about you, John? Can you second it?
No, yeah.
Because you look like you were going to. No, absolutely. So we've got a mover and we've got a seconder. All those in favour? Aye. Thank you, John. That is carried.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Very exciting.
Cheers.
Cheers. This is a fantastic development. I like seeing in a report, in an agenda. 7.1 Group Manager Report, which is you, Lorna.
Thank you. I've taken as read, but also want to acknowledge that while I'm championing this committee, we do have a group of other group managers who are also contributing with their teams to this work. So it is a collaboration. The Future for Local Government update that was actually attended by our Chief Executive and our Corporate Services GM, Donna Holland, with some Mayor Len and elected members. The Future for Local Government, as you know, is an independent review of how local government could be shaped. And with this incoming government, it will be up to Local Government New Zealand and partners and sectors to lobby about what was in that review and what resonates and what opportunities there will be for local government going into the future, particularly as things may be taken away from local government and we inherit other things in that space. I don't know if you want to add anything to that or into your chair report.
So Peter attended the previous meeting where they were discussing all of the recommendations, and then Peter and Len, and then myself and Len went to that second one where we were just really focusing on the four that hadn't landed on an absolute consensus. So it was quite exciting. I was involved with the wellbeing discussion and how we should be tackling wellbeing, and it was absolutely varied across the whole country as to how different councils are dealing with wellbeing. We had somebody saying, well, it's not our space at all. We had other councils in that group saying, well, this is pretty much core business for us, is what we do. So I think it's really important for LGNZ to land on something, and I don't envy them trying to put all of our notes together to try to land in that position where we can be everything to all people. So yeah, it's an interesting space for sure. And one of the things that came up quite strongly in that group is that some of the wellbeing things that we do, and Mayor's Task Force Jobs was mentioned specifically, work really well and could be a really exciting model for other community outcomes in the wellbeing space. So I think it's worth watching as a space.
I think one particular issue also to raise is around funding and financing, particularly as we're heading into our LTP discussions, and just about the impact on the ratepayer. What other ways is there to fund and finance, knowing that at the moment it's very unsustainable. I don't know if you want to mention anything on that, Donna.
Yeah, there was a lot, like your experience with the wellbeing. There was a lot of discussion and a lot of work and that went on. But the majority, I think, of the people that attended there were all on the same page with the fact that there does have to be change, and some of those changes, that everybody agreed on were things like that the Crown pays rates, for example. Some really fundamental changes. There was some other changes that was being discussed around GST, which was interesting, and that was basically that the GST that is collected in a specific district should go back to that district. So that was one thing. I'm not sure how that's going to fly with the new government, but yeah, there was a number of initiatives like that LGNZ are collating and will be putting forward. So I think it's just watch the space and see what happens.
The only thing I could add to that is that there was a discussion about non-rates income for councils, and there were a couple of examples shared from the floor of councils who are doing things to get them income that isn't reliant on the ratepayer. So I think New Plymouth District Council has a billboard on the side of their building, and they say that generates, you know, X amount of income for them. And so LGNZ committed to having some sort of workshop for councils where looking at non-rateable income can be looked at, so just diversifying income streams. So that will be exciting. Yeah.
It sounds good. Another example, when you reference that Palmerston North City Council, they actually have a contract where quite a lot of councils around the district will pay for PNCC to do the after-hours service.
Yes.
And that's a really good revenue stream for that particular council. So it's also about different ways that we as a council can look at what you know, what our strengths are and where we may be able to add value for other councils.
You happy?
Can I just ask a question about the future for local government? Is there a sort of a time frame or an end game that
They're having a special general meeting, I think on the 11th of December, just to ratify all of those decisions. I can check if you've gotten an invite. I've said that I'll go to it, so I'm expecting an invite.
No, right.
It's a special
Yeah,
general
so
meeting.
there will be would start the new year with a bit of an understanding about their direction, or?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, that's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Oh, I've spoken about the affordable housing issue and the conference that I went to, and there's definitely more work that we will be doing in that space through the different groups about what council may be able to do in terms of leverage and lever. The social wellbeing data, this is an exciting piece of work around getting together all of the data that we don't collect at the moment, and we will be able to do this at a more granular level in the new year, where we'll be able to go to more communities to find out more and understand what issues they have and about their makeup and their character. So then that can help us inform you know, where we program work and, you know, where we're able to fund and support. And that work's being done independently and we're not paying for it. So that's even better. I've also just referenced on attachment A. So just with our community management team who support all the community boards, we've just pulled some data about all the networking sessions that they have with their communities around the district in the past. I think we've done that for the last quarter. And so these community networking days are an opportunity for the boards to either go out into the field and meet with different trusts and iwi and stakeholders. And it's also an opportunity for community groups and ratepayer groups to just have a networking session with their local boards. And so it's just a lot more better relationship building and just more of a getting to know each other, understanding what projects are happening in the community that people may or not be aware of. Councillor Morrissey and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago when we were up at Hiratonga, just on the road trips that your local board's done, and just how much value you've seen in that.
Yeah. It's been great. It's worked out well for Coromandel, Colville, and I actually I think because of our geography up there and the isolation, going up into those small communities has been well received. They know that we remember they're up there, so yeah, they've been good.
Yep, so we've just graphed them in the 4 different wellbeings to sort of show the spread of the different groups that we're seeing and what outcomes it applies to. And that is me.
Martin?
Thank you, Lorna. On page 60, about halfway down, when they're talking about the collecting the information, it talks about delivering rigorous results and talking about talking to the different subgroups in the measurement planning process. and we've got Maori youth, recent migrants, or disabled people. I mean, presumably that's just a small little, as an example, because I would feel that the various groups around the peninsula that deal with the consequences of homelessness and drug and alcohol abuse and our vulnerable people really need to be included in that. I'm trying by talking to as many vulnerable street folk in Thames as I can. So yes, thank you.
I'm taking it the question that yes, this is that it was a small group of who will be canvassed as well. With the health locality as well, they've been a really important partner, which we're starting to develop, and also with MSD and all the different agencies. Helen's just sort of touched on that a little bit, and with our social navigators as well, we've been able to sort of link up as well with all of those types of groups. So that will be really helpful with informing with this data.
Thank you for finding a question within my speech.
Anybody else? No questions for Lorna? Oh, in that case, I would move that we receive this report and
Just one quick question as well. Sorry, because this is the first one, I'm also guided by what you'd like to see in here as well, so that I can also go back to the leadership team to see what else we can help to populate that with the things that you want to see.
Yeah, I'm extremely supportive of having a group manager's report, so that's brilliant. Thank you. Do I have a move? No, got a mover. That's me. Do I have a seconder? Oh, Martin was just quick. Just happened to be looking that way. All right, and all those in favour? Aye. The chairperson's report is very short, and I think that you've probably read it. I'm going to take it as read and just ask if anybody has any questions. I can also just say, since nobody's saying anything, Jennifer Nicol was present for the majority of this meeting, but I see his, I understand, is travelling this afternoon, and so has now hopped offline. But is referred to as here as being one of the people who's been really trying to push both climate change and wellbeings, informally with elected members across both the Waikato and New Zealand. So kudos to her for that. No questions? You've got a question.
Well, my civic clerk's gone down, so I can't see the report at the moment. But happy to get a chairperson's report at the end of the meeting. I think it's up there with the group managers one. So yeah, keep your reports coming. If you're open to a critique, I'd say you chaired your first meeting very well, Madam Chairperson. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll accept that as a comment. Thank you. Thank you, Rika.
Second. Yeah.
You could
Just forget me. Just forget me.
Oh, well, in that case, all those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Well, that's it. That's the end of the agenda. So I can officially declare this meeting closed. It's 12:14. Thank you.
Efficiency. Thank you, Robin.
Look at it.